Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sherry Zhao, the Regional Director at MyTax. It is my great pleasure today to be moderating the panel with 4 experts coming from the public sector and also private sector on this very, very interesting topic. So at MyTax, we are at the front line connecting businesses with post-secondary institutions to foster collaborative innovation and also co-fund the collaborative projects. So in my day-to-day, there have been a lot of discussions around big data, around the AI. It comes up almost on a daily basis. And we also know digitizing infrastructure and modes has the tremendous potential in increasing efficiency for the future of transportation. But how do cities and regions capitalize on this trend, and how can they really adapt themselves to be future ready for a future where transportation cars are becoming more and more smart? And also, what kind of investments do we need to make right now to be future proof so that when the digitization finally arrives, that we are not scrambling for another change? So I am really excited today to be able to have this conversation with the esteemed panelists. So without further ado, I'd love my panelists to have each introduce themselves and talk about where they come from, what kind of experience they have. So Jamie, maybe we'll start with you.
My name is Jamie Perkins. I'm the Director of Communications at Superpedestrian, which is an American-based micromobility company. We specialize in scooters. If you've walked through that door, then you've seen our bright yellow and gray scooters. We also have them with seats. And we're a little bit different because we built our scooter from the ground up in-house. So all of the hardware, that's us, but also all of the software that goes inside it that you don't see. We say that we're the smartest scooter on the market, and we really do believe it. Our platform technology, vehicle intelligence gets smarter and smarter over time via machine learning, so that every new fleet that we roll out and every scooter ride that goes out on the streets, we're learning a little bit more about how our scooters operate. We're able to then use that data through that platform that when it detects any issues, most of its issues, it's able to autonomously repair, or it's able to take itself out of service and write a service ticket. So we have been live on streets since 2020 all across the US and Europe, and we keep pushing ahead to make a smarter, better, safer scooter.
Great, thank you, Jamie. And Yuval?
Hi, I'm Yuval. I'm based actually here in Vancouver, and I'm a curbside mobility specialist working at Arcadis IBI Group. I'm specifically in CurbIQ, which is a product, and I'm in the CurbIQ team, and we're helping cities digitize their curbside inventory and share that, use that to share that with operations and for planning purposes, and integrate sensors and cameras and parking apps, an array of different things, everything that happens on the curbside. In addition to that, I'm also an adjunct professor at UBC with teaching urban design. And before this, I did a research at UBC, actually, that was funded by TransLink with their new mobility research grant, and it was about transitioning into new mobility and the future of curb space. So you can see how that research led me towards this path. But actually, I have an urban design background, and I've been working with master planning, transport-oriented developments, and a lot with tactical urbanism, placemaking, and in the past, even mapping and cartography. So looking forward to sharing some ideas here in the urban perspective. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Yuval. And Yuval is the other local here with me, so I feel very supported. But also feeling really glad to have Renee coming in from the Bay Area to tell us a little more about herself.
Great, thank you. And I have about a 1-minute video that I think might play as I'm doing my introduction. But yeah, great to meet you guys. My name is Renee Autumn-Ray. I'm the Senior Director for Transportation Policy at Hayden AI. And so we have a really interesting value proposition that we've been sharing with transit agencies in the US to date, which is let's take some of the really precise localization and mapping technology that autonomous vehicle companies have been created and use it in a really practical way that helps transit agencies solve a problem that a number of them have had, which is they're dedicating money to dedicated bus lanes and to bus rapid transit networks, but if the buses are stopped by illegally parked vehicles, they're not seeing some of the operational and safety gains that they were hoping for. And so what they've been able to do with our technology is put a camera in a vehicle, capture those traffic violations, and what we've seen in the time that we've been operational with New York MTA is that it's actually changing driver behavior, it's improving operational speeds, and it's using technology to solve a problem for these agencies. So maybe we'll show the video a little bit later, but I haven't seen it come up. But yeah, that's the value proposition that we're sharing, and excited to be here today.
Thank you, Renee. And hopefully we'll see the video coming on later at the panel discussion. But if not, please do reach out to Renee and look for the video because it's quite impressive. Speaking of transit, Ahsan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Assan Baig, I'm the Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology Officer at AC Transit. I've been in IT business for 30 years. Last 20 years, I've been in public sector. Again, really fascinating, amazing, I guess, opportunity for myself. I see public transit is at the crossroad. I spent about 15 years working for City of Oakland in a similar role till this opportunity came up, and I jumped on it because I think that public transit is at a very interesting junction where technology is really making a huge impact as far as the mobility services are concerned. So I'm glad to be here and looking forward to join this conversation.
And thank you all for the introduction. Just a reminder for the audience, we do have mics lining up. If you have questions, please feel free to walk to the mic and I'll signal you to ask your questions. Maybe I'll start with my first question, given Ahsan coming from a very transit and regional planning perspective. I'm curious, what have you done in your region by investing in big data or in artificial intelligence to really digitizing the transportation? What kind of benefits have you seen?
So I think I spoke earlier that we are San Francisco Bay Area. From the complexity of the governance perspective, there are 27 different transit agencies, small and big. We happen to be the third largest, 200,000 riders on a daily basis. Then of course we have the other major players. But one of the things which we have done part of AC Transit in the role of CIO is we put together our digital transformation strategy. And one of the core component in that is the data-centric decision making. I personally believe that in the age we are living in, pretty much every business, doesn't matter what your product is, what your service is, what services you offer, everyone is a data company. So it's very critical that we need to focus on putting together a right strategy. So part of our digital transformation, digital strategy, we put together a comprehensive, holistic data governance program and a plan because you cannot really leverage the AI and some of the cool technologies up on the business side till you have the proper foundation in place. And that's where the roles, the responsibilities, the proper infrastructure, the scalability, and of course, cloud has tremendously helped us in leveraging those capabilities. Just on average, there was a recent poll done checking out about thousands of CIOs all over the country, and they identified that on average, every organization, every company has about 400 to 1,000 different data sources. So for us to get to the point and leveraging and using those data sources, you need to have the proper platform, you need to have the proper integration in place. And that's where we have been spending a lot of our time digitizing and making sure that everything what captures the data, whether it's our video camera system, it's our audio system, it's our IoT sensors in our buses, we are digitizing that data so we can really monetize and use for our operational efficiency as far as for our safety of our riders and our employees.
That's really great to hear about the integration of the data governance structure and also being able to leverage those data collected to make better decisions. Renee did talk about the camera implemented at New York City and where you have seen the changing behaviors of drivers. In addition to that, by implementing this digitalization into the transit system, are there other benefits you have observed for the cities to adapt?
A primary benefit that MTA has noticed is a reduction in crashes. Safety is oftentimes the #1 priority for any transit agency. But frankly, one thing I think is interesting about Hayden's technology, a lot of the work that public agencies are doing, as Assan mentioned, it's digital transformation. So it's taking a manual process and making it digital so that the employees that you have on staff can focus on sort of higher order tasks. But something that I think is interesting about Hayden is there's a lot of work that really has never been done because it was always too expensive and too manual or just impossible to do with people. So for instance, if you look at the technology Hayden's providing, it's a camera on a bus. When the bus is turned on, the camera is on. And if the agency that was using our technology had some questions about what's happening at an intersection or, what are some problem spots, they're able to get data that they've never had access to before because it was always prohibitively expensive to gather it. And so you're starting to see not just digital transformation, but also what are problems that we've had for so long that have never been solvable that we might be able to use technology to solve?
So gathering more data in a very cost-effective way without any invasive technology implanted or implemented to really help more transit providers or even just infrastructure providers to make better decisions by utilizing technology. Yeah. And Jamie, how about you? From the smart scooter perspective, what kind of benefits have you seen?
Yeah, so I mentioned we have that kind of operational and maintenance efficiency that we're gaining, but I also want to point out where we could really be helping cities with the data that we get, because each ride that one of our riders takes is a data point. In Chicago right now, we're running a pilot of our pedestrian defense technology, and essentially what it can do is tell us precisely where a rider is riding and when. And we're noticing through that data that we're getting a lot of validation of exactly what you might think is happening on the street, but that we've never really had validation of before. So we've learned through this pilot that riders are most likely to take rides on the sidewalk during their first or second rides. That's helpful to us as a company as far as the education that's needed. It's also helpful in forecasting out and talking to cities so that we can kind of have that conversation of what's it going to look like when a scooter operation comes to your city to start. And then one of the really intriguing data points that we've found, we're running this pilot in 2 different neighborhoods with very different infrastructure. One of them is more downtown, and it has more of that bicycle infrastructure that you're going to expect. And then we're also running the pilot in a neighborhood that's outside of downtown, and it's not as affluent, and it hasn't had the infrastructure investments. We've seen our riders are 3 times more likely to be riding on the sidewalks in these areas rather than in streets. And these are the kinds of insights that just by having this data, we're able to turn over to the city and say, if you want alternative transportation in cities and across cities, not just in downtown areas, these are the particular places that are going to need that infrastructure investment.
That is definitely very interesting data, because myself as a scooter rider, sometimes I'm still on the sidewalk. I'm also a cyclist. I feel way safer just to ride my bike on the road than the scooter. So interesting to hear that insight from the data collected at a larger population as well. And Yuval, from the CurbIQ perspective, what are the benefits you have seen by providing the insight into cities and regions?
Yeah, so before going into the benefits, I wanted to talk a little bit about the digitization and automation processes. So basically, digitizing the curbside, it means to collect data on all the curbside regulations, what they are, and if this data is not available digitally, it has to be collected manually in the field. But often there is a lot of data sets and open data that we can integrate, and then so that would be kind of the supply, and then we've developed all these automation processes to make all that kind of seamless and ingest everything quickly. And there's also ingesting of data, of real-time data from parking apps, from cameras and from sensors, and kind of centralizing all that data. And then that as well is kind of through an automation process. In terms of other uses of automation, we have one of the data collection processes uses machine vision to detect the signage and then translate that automatically to the curb layer. And also we're kind of developing a pricing engine and predictive parking algorithms. In terms of the benefits, there's many different uses. So one major one is for planning purposes and helping make informed decisions and knowing exactly, quantifying specific zones, knowing exactly what is in that zone in terms of the different uses. And that could be only in terms of the supply, but if there is demand data from these real-time sources, then you can also quantify that and kind of put all that together to make decisions. This could be, for example, if you want to implement a bike corridor and you're kind of deciding which route it should take, and so you can quantify a specific route and see exactly how many parking spaces have to be reallocated, how many curb cuts, how many intersections, all the data along that you can compare and contrast to other alternatives. Also, as I mentioned, with the cameras and sensors, so you could, we have APIs to help drivers of commercial fleets or even just private vehicles. And because we have where it's available the real time, you can not only direct to where it's allowed, for example, where is a commercial loading zone to direct a commercial fleet there, but also in the future, or if there is real time where it's currently also available, so allowed and available. And yeah, through all this data of also the parking payment, we can produce kind of reports of entire years or seasons to compare that. Yeah, and help with the operations in general.
Absolutely. I'm hearing a lot of collecting the data to help with planning purposes, to get to know what exactly is happening at when and where, what type of behaviors are the drivers, are the user or the scooter users are having at specific location, which again are very valuable insight for the transit planning or just for city overall urban planning purposes. I'm quite curious, I think the audience might be as well, is once the computer vision is involved in the technology and this type of data collection using camera on the streets are being implemented, are there any privacy concerns? And for specifically for the user or for others, how have your business or how has the region been addressing those privacy concerns for users? I'm going to throw it at Jamie to start with, given that, you know, as a scooter user, sometimes I kind of figured if my trip is getting recorded to use for predictive models, I'm curious to see how my data is anonymized or not.
I mean, I'm going to answer this quickly with 2 points. One, we don't have cameras on our scooters, which greatly decreases our privacy risks. And the second is that we use aggregated anonymized data. Good, good.
And Renee, how about you? There's camera involved.
No, absolutely. One thing that I think has been really interesting, I follow pretty closely news about AI and concerns about regulation and that sort of thing. And it's true that in the US, there hasn't been comprehensive regulation for artificial intelligence, but because our technology is something that we sell to public agencies, there's already a pretty robust set of data privacy regulations around what is permitted to capture on a public street. How do you need to safeguard data if you're talking about something like a license plate that's associated with a driver who's registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles? And so we actually have a pretty significant amount of state, federal, and sometimes local regulation around how we can legally operate within the bounds of the regulations that are already in place. So for instance, I'll give you an example. We do something called processing on the edge. And so what that means is that, as I said, when the bus is on, the camera is on, but the only data that leaves that bus is an alleged traffic violation. That's about 6 or 8 seconds of video. We share that through the cloud. A human reviews it because that's a requirement of traffic violation laws in the US. And everything else, everything else gets removed from the bus. If an agency wanted to do some sort of review in the few days afterwards, they would have that right because they do own that data, but they have pretty strict rules themselves around what the data can be used for and how long that data either can or must be stored before it must be destroyed. And so in fact, a large majority of the data that we capture with our images is deleted. And also, we do not do any facial recognition, nor would we partner with a company that uses facial recognition.
That sounds really great, especially hearing about the additional human staff to confirm with the violation. Ahsan, from the data governance perspective, how is your region, requiring this specific regulation towards service providers when it comes to data privacy and all other aspects?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and I think it's up to a lot of discussion when it comes to some of the new technologies, like especially like AI. But of course, we are a public sector government agency. We do collect information from PII to PCI, different types of data types. So we take it very, very seriously. Whatever controls and risks measures we have in place, that is of course our top priority to make sure that we are protecting that data and having the proper controls in place from the data classification, categorization perspective. But at the same time, whatever actions we take, we need to make sure that we have the proper safety policy, security policy, privacy policy. All these policy documents, they are pretty much all online. Anyone can go and take a look at it. And we, of course, take it to our board, which is elected officials, present it, get that feedback from our citizens, customers. What are we doing? What are we not doing? How are we making sure that the privacy is intact? And then once we, in fact, collect that information, we are making sure that we have the proper controls, protecting the data, safeguarding the data. I mean, those are all, of course, pretty intense requirements. So we definitely take it very, very seriously. And making sure that the vendors, we are working, we put together the whole cloud security appendix and attachment, for example, in our contract. So we want to make sure that if you're working with any vendor, any solution provider, they have gone through the whole vetting process so that we feel comfortable that we have the proper cyber insurance, cyber control in place before we in fact do any kind of a business with that vendor.
Would you say going through the regulation and setting out the appropriate policy was the biggest barrier for adopting digitization into the transit planning, or was there another barrier that you had to remove?
I mean, definitely, I think that is a step we need to follow, because we are a government agency. We cannot take any risk, zero risk when it comes to adopting. But at the same time, that really does not mean that we can do or we cannot leverage new technologies or emerging technologies or cutting edge technologies. And there are certain ways that you can mitigate that risk. In fact, we work with Hayden, for example, and we did the pilot in city of Oakland, deploying technology because it appeared to us that's fully aligned with our business, solving a very critical business problem. We are a public transit, our top metric, how we get ourselves measured, is on-time performance. So when you have these, services or other, vehicle owners, they are blocking our lanes or bus stops, that becomes an issue for the on-time performance and the accessibility services. We were looking for that kind of a technology, so we went through the whole pilot and testing, making sure everything works before we actually engage into the full deployment.
Cool. So from the service provider perspective, Renee, what was the largest barrier you removed to be able to work with City of Oakland?
I'll say as a tech startup that we have built a technology that works. And frankly, it's basically we had to demonstrate that we have a working technology. We went through a pilot process of 18 months with New York MTA, and it's hard enough to create a startup, but when you have a piece of hardware, you have to demonstrate not only that the technology works and that it's accurate, but also that you respect the fact that you're putting it on a pretty significant asset that's owned by the agency. And so I think, frankly, it was demonstrating that we had a model that was going to work, that we had product market fit, and that they could see with a degree of confidence the accuracy of the data that we were capturing on their behalf.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talking about the data accuracy, Yuval, how would you describe when working with regions, cities, what kind of barriers you had to remove to be able to participate in this digital transformation for infrastructure?
Yeah, I'd like to link back to the camera question just because I have one thing there. So for the curbside, you could either use a camera or a sensor, and obviously a sensor is more exact in terms of yes, no, but it can't detect what type of vehicle is there. But we've had talks with some cities that in the choice that they had, they ended up not choosing cameras just because there was a longer process of approval, just like Renee said, all the requirements, and that really defined the choice and not the technology, or not kind of the fear of the privacy, but just like a purely kind of the bureaucracy. In terms of the barriers, I think for data collection, it's more on the side of that the data that was collected can quickly become out of date, so it's about keeping data up to date. So cities, there's a few cities that collected some curbside data a few years ago, and now they're not quite sure if it is up to date or not. So you can of course do like spot checks and kind of quality controls of specific areas, but if you don't know, you might end up having to collect everything again, which is so what we've done is basically we've made it very simple to update regulations with our software, and we've also implemented kind of getting from the cities their work orders of every time they make a change, that they can directly upload that and we can update that. So as long as the city keeps track of everything, then we can kind of follow that. But it's really important for the cities to, like when they do go into these processes, that they have a plan of how to keep it up to date.
For sure, keeping data up to date, keeping the interaction up to date was one of the ongoing, I guess, activities instead of a barrier either. How about Jamie? How about the scooter business? What was the barrier that you had to remove to be able to work with City of Chicago or others?
Yeah. I mean, before we even talk about barriers, I feel like I have to say the industry itself is only about the age of a kindergartner. And so sometimes it's less about removing barriers as making sure people aren't putting them up. And I think that the scooter industry really has kind of two big existential threats. And the first is keeping sidewalk space open for pedestrians, and the second is really the parking issue. And so what we're finding is that data and AI solutions are a way forward through those barriers so that they don't become permanent. We're working on a solution right now that's an AI AR solution for parking. So we are training our AI model based on pictures that we have from our own big database. Our riders across many cities are required to take end-of-ride photos. And so we're training our model based on that to recognize objects like bicycles, bike racks, trees, curbsides, to be able to figure out, is this parked correctly, and be able to validate it against each city's parking rules. And then we will be able to feed that outcome into an AR model. It's a lot like Pokemon Go when you get in there, except instead of looking for a Pokemon, you're looking for a proper parking space. And we're able to guide people to that parking space. So that's something that's still under development right now, but it's like everything that we're doing right now with massive amount of data that we have and these programs that we're creating, it's all about keeping those barriers from becoming permanent.
That's a really good point of, instead of thinking about removing barriers, given the nascent technology boom that's being adopted by the cities and regions into infrastructure, working together between public and private sector to make sure that the new regulation coming in place is not a barrier, but more a promotion to the adoption. We have time for one question from the audience, if there's any. If not, my final question, and I think is going to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I thought this was somewhat related. So as we advance kind of AI in the transportation sector, I'm noticing, as we've spoken about, there's a lot of reliance on sensors, cameras, sensors and whatnot, which to me seems like a bit of a reactionary, the vehicle's reacting to its environment. I've always wondered if there's any place to create more of a network of vehicles. So I guess I'm thinking of InterVehicle Communication, whether that's been thought about. And if so, if the answer is yes, is there infrastructure that we can start kind of mandating in modern vehicles moving forward, so such a network could be possible? I personally could see great benefits to such a network. So yeah, just curious what you guys think about that.
So I guess if I understand your question correctly, you're talking about a network within a vehicle or a bus, I guess, or a train.
Yeah, for instance, just the ability to communicate between vehicles as, for instance, they become autonomous, or as a computer might communicate with another computer.
Oh yeah,
and transfer data, yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think there are a number of different organizations, national level, international level. They have been spending a lot of their time, engineers, Society for Automotive Engineers, SAE, IEEE, ITS, Intelligent Transportation Society for America, APTA. A lot of these organizations, some of them are SDOs, Standard Development Organizations. ISO actually is another great example. So a lot of vehicle-to-vehicle communication, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, and in fact IVN, which is the internal vehicle network. A lot of those standards, protocols, data subsets to the level of field, they are all documented and defined. So it's really more of a standard development as we are getting more and more, you're 100% right, intelligent when it comes to the vehicles. You need to have that kind of operating framework where everyone can understand, what we are getting into. Like for public transit, we work with, our services, 15 different cities. 15 different cities have different traffic signal system. So same bus going from one city to another city, I want to make sure that the traffic signal priority, TSP, or transit signal priority system, what I have installed on my bus, is going to work seamlessly from Berkeley to Hayward to Oakland. Those standards are all documented, defined. It's all about pushing those standards and adopting and deploying it.
Thank you. And I'm looking at the time. I wonder whether there's one sentence remark, closing remark from our panelists, if you would like to share with the audience. Yeah, let's go with Ahsan.
Well, I guess I can just say that this is a fascinating time, honestly, because where we are seeing how technology and policies and people are all coming together. I mean, we have generated in last 5 years the amount of data the entire human history has not seen in the previous years. So it's again, really this is the time for us to take a look at it, what we are collecting, and see how we can use that information to improve our standards of living.
Yeah, I would say this is just a great time to be working in transportation. We have a lot of opportunity to, frankly, improve the way we do business and help reduce carbon emissions, and appreciate having this forum to be able to talk with some of our partners across business and industry and the government.
Yeah, in the title of this talk, it's efficiencies, and I'm kind of a word of caution that we don't become, with all the process of AI and automation, that we don't become slaves to efficiency. And at the end, what's the obstacle in efficiency is the human. So taking away the human is going to be even more efficient. So we have to be cautious of that.
I was thinking along the same lines that we're going to have AI and enabled by big data to give us a lot of solutions. So we have to be really sure that we know what the problem is that we're solving for.
Great. I would like to thank all my panelists for joining me for the conversation today, and also thank you all for participating and listening in. My takeaway from this conversation is really I'm so glad to see the public-private sector partnership in advancing the efficiency by tapping into responsible big data generation and also AI. So looking forward to the bright future that we are collectively building together. Thank you all. Thank you.